Today I will be reading from the Christian Science Wartime Activities, which is published by the Christian Science Publishing Society. The capture of a whole town by 3 prisoners of war, one of whom was a Christian Scientist, is told in the following account. 2 soldiers and myself were on road reconnaissance near the Moselle River on March 12, 1945. Because of faulty instructions and carelessness on our part, we walked directly into the town of Erzig, which, unknown to us, was still occupied by the Germans. After a brief battle against machine gun and rifle fire and concussion grenades, we were taken prisoner. This battle lasted about a half hour, and our foes were as close to 25 feet. Although the ground and buildings around us were literally chewed by enemy fire, we were taken prisoners without receiving a scratch. After being held prisoner for 3 days, walking day and night with nothing but a loaf of black bread among the 3 of us, we were finally placed with a mixed group of Allied prisoners, about 100 French, Serbs, Poles, and others. I had numerous clippings from the Christian Science Monitor, which I carried in my pockets and read and reread, also showing them to my 2 companions, who apparently knew nothing of Christian Science, but seemed interested in the articles. Nevertheless, as soon as we were placed with the other prisoners, most of whom had been prisoners for 4 or 5 years, our station in life changed. They seemed very grateful to see anyone who was an American and could give them news of the war. They couldn't do enough for us and fed us generously from their store of food received from the American Red Cross. The Army had issued each of us a German phrase book, and with this book, some small maps, and the aid of a Polish boy who spoke very little English, we were able with many gestures to make more or less sensible conversation. In this way, we learned that our captors were retreating and trying to get us across the Rhine River to a prison camp. The group had 20 guards, 3 of whom seemed designated as our special caretakers. The sound of our Allied artillery and the sight of our planes was very common, and obviously had the Germans worried. About 2 miles before reaching the Rhine, our guards stopped at a small town where it was claimed there was a school teacher who could speak English. We were taken to the school teacher, whose English proved to be even worse than that of our Polish friend. However, with the aid of our phrase book and our gestures, we convinced the school teacher, the Burgomaster, and many others that the Americans were coming. The only way they could avoid disaster, we said, was to give us a written surrender out of the town, turning over all our weapons and the 20 guards as our prisoners. The surrender and the prisoners we were to take back to our lines. This was a big order, but after a day and a half of talking, it was nearly all accomplished. We had the written surrender and their weapons, and 16 of the guards were our prisoners. The other 4 had fled during the night. They refused to go with us to our lines because they were afraid of meeting their own SS troops on the way. The truth of the matter was that we didn't know for sure in which direction the Americans were, so it was agreed that we would remain in the town until they arrived. They did arrive the next day in the form of an armored column. They halted on the highway, about a half a mile away, and prepared to shell the town. Before this could be done, the surprise commander of the tank outfit was met by a delegation consisting of one of my companions and one French ex-prisoner who was carrying a large white flag and a written surrender of the town. The tank column rode peacefully into a town whose streets were lined with white flags and whose military and civilian weapons were piled in the center of the main street. This was the 18th of March, 1945. I am very grateful not only that my two friends and myself went through this experience unharmed, either by hunger, fatigue, or enemy action, but that a town was captured, 16 of the enemy taken prisoner, and about 100 Allied prisoners of war liberated, without any harm being done to either side. Not a shot was fired. Yes, right triumphed, even more emphatically than by other methods. Throughout the entire experience, I tried to cling to the simple truths I have learned in Christian Science, and I am convinced that without any meager understanding, the story would have been far less pleasant. And so, in the stern privations and bitter cold of prisoner of war camps, many Christian scientists became more intimately acquainted with the angel thoughts which had in the past brought them safely through the ills and terrors of military experience. Here they had ample opportunity to prove the truth of a statement on page 66 of Science and Health. Each successive stage of experience unfolds new views of divine goodness and love. Not each stage of happy, comfortable, harmonious experience, but each successive stage. The prison camps brought these new spiritual views to all who recognized the situation as a successive stage of experience and profited by it. The angels of spiritual thought opened prison doors of fear and desolation for those who loved God and brought them forth into the sunlight, whether they were known humanly as friend or enemy of the Allied cause. In the arms of divine love, they found themselves warmed and wanted when they put aside mortal hatreds and united within the divine universality of the Mother Church. Thank you for joining us today.